Great. So we're recording. And we have this stuck here. All right, so getting stuff from Cinema 4D into After Effects, and yeah, so this is something now you can download. I'll download for free and try out. So this works a little more. This is a little easier than Maya if you compare the two. Everything you need is in front of you. Like that's a huge, huge difference. We looked last week at the Maya interface, which had various modes and various essential bits that were hidden. Everything you need to make stuff is in front of you. So I'm going to say create object cube. And the controls are a little different. You hold down the number keys. Remember, in Maya they changed the view. This is new enough to me that I don't know the keyboard shortcuts yet. But I have found a few of them. And one of the important ones is you use the number keys to control the camera. And you hold down 1 to pan, and then drag with the mouse. 2 to zoom. And then 3 to rotate.
And Alt doubles.
Alt what doubles the?
And rotate.
Oh, Alt, yeah, Alt doubles. Okay, yeah, so it does. So 3 or Alt scroll. So, but 1 to pan took me a while to figure out. So. Here are some objects, create, and what's neat about this is that it makes a lot of complex functionality available to you right away. Like, for instance, one thing though to be aware of before you can edit the mesh in Cinema 4D, you notice how all this is grayed out? You need to enable editing the object with this button right here. And now these subdivide, mesh, subdivide. So now these are enabled. So mesh, subdivide. And there's some fun stuff, create, deformer, explosion, that you can access really simply. And this, which is equivalent to the outliner view in Maya, also right there in front of you all the time. This is an overview of your scene. So essentially all your basic tools are in front of you all the time, which is part of what makes this a lot easier to use. If I want to drag, so here I have this explosion deformer. If I want to drag it onto the oil tag, and there we go, strength. To keyframe things, a property, right click, animation, add keyframe, move along the timeline. Auto keyframing isn't as seamless as Maya. At least I find I have to manually add keyframes more often. And so you can get relatively complex effects very quickly. Creating textures, load material preset. Oops. Sky, drag and drop. So you can get up and running very quickly. Create. Create light. Copy, paste. Now if I want to view more scenes, for view, here I can use my multiple views to move things around. If I want to create a camera, create camera. If I want to switch view to the camera, camera, use camera, camera. So now I'm using, notice how the camera changes. So now this window, just like how we set things up in Maya, I'm controlling the camera with this window. And like in all 3D programs, the camera itself is keyframeable. Add keyframe. Add keyframe. And then that move like this. So here we have a basic scene. Let's set this up for rendering. Edit render settings. You can dive into these and set a lot, but the most important one here is your resolution, 1920 by 1080. Now look, we're already through that entire 20-minute discussion of Maya. Like, we've just touched and turned on all the things we did there. Now, it's not to discount Maya, right? It's that especially when it comes to character animation. Cinema 4D just doesn't have all the features that Maya has got. But in terms of learning, in terms of getting something built quickly, and especially what Joda was talking about, backgrounds. Creating backgrounds that work with After Effects, where you don't need to do 3D character animation because you're creating a background for something in After Effects. This is invaluable. So here now we set the resolution to that, and this is very After Effects-like. Add to render queue. It wants me to save my project file. Now there's a lot to tweak in the render settings, but these are basically what's the other one you need is, hold on, render, edit render settings. You also need to check frame settings, all frames. 0 to 30. You can also hit this button here to render just the current frame. And notice that the quality of the rendering is quite nice, like the default settings. So here are the render settings you can get to from here, with this icon. And add to render queue, yes. And this took me a while to figure out. You start the render with jobs start rendering. It's hiding there. It's no big button. One thing you might want to do before that, though, and this is where the After Effects Exchange comes in. It's hiding in an annoying place. Edit render settings, which remember you can also get to here. Down here, save, compositing project file, save. And I don't know what these do. I've been checking them all. This is probably worth researching what exactly they do. But look, you actually have some other project files involved. Final Cut is intriguing to me because I wasn't aware Final Cut had a camera. So now I could support these are the exchange files to go from combustion to After Effects. This AEC file. Oh, this is an annoying. Okay, could not save. Enable output paths. What they mean is choose a file name. All right. So, yeah, the output path is for the rendering of the movie. Right. So that's a really good thing to be clear on here on the desktop right now. Exactly. Here I have my Cinema 4D project, which contains all my geometry, the cylinder and the cube. Here I have the After Effects project file. Look how small it is. That's just a bunch of keyframes with the camera. And now we're about to render the movie. So render queue, start. And there we go. Now this is the way I would work. Barring Greg's experiments with Element, which is also interesting, but more limited in this application. This is in general how I recommend sharing data between any two animation programs. Figure out how to get the camera. So what do we have now? We have I forgot to turn this into a QuickTime movie. This is one situation where the terminal is great. desktop, delete all. There we go. Let's go back to here, edit render settings, and save, format, QuickTime movie. Options, we'll leave this as animation. The output, we should also probably change the frame rate to 24. That was something else that I missed. Because that could come back to bite you later in terms of syncing up the camera for the 30 frame render and in a 24 frame project. So just to double check this here, edit render settings, 24 frames, save QuickTime movie, and now we're ready to go. And we probably need to re-export that After Effects camera file as well because we changed the frame rate. Start. And so let's import now our movie. And it's still at 30 frames per second. Render settings, options. All right, last time. Okay, so now we've got, it's still at 30 frames per second. Maya also has problems with QuickTime. I'm just going to manually change this to 24 and see what happens. In general, with 3D animation programs, you're best off rendering out a sequence of still images. I was hoping that...
Is black just an alpha?
I believe we need to specify alpha if we're going to render an alpha. That's a really good question. Let's look at the alpha channel.
Didn't have selected.
Yeah, I didn't have it selected there. Yeah. Let's see options, output. So I have the frame rate to 24. The time, maybe there's a separate project settings. Project settings. The internal frame rate was set to 24. There we go. Okay, so actually let's do that. Let's go render, edit render settings. That's set to 24. That's set to 24. And let's add an alpha channel. Save project. Add to render queue. Start. I am puzzled. Because we're still showing this at 30 frames per second. Let's render this as an image sequence. When you're dealing with a bunch of new images, it's always best to put them in a frame, rendering out a sequence of images. Or put them in a folder to keep them from cluttering everything up. And now we have the correct number of images. Okay. So here we go. Now I want to import that project file. Notice that now we have a light and a camera. Let's just do this from scratch here. What's cool about this, and because we have the alpha channel enabled, like you suggested, we can do things like this, right? We can throw a solid behind it. It will show through, right? Any video footage could also be there. Here, let's do this. I'm going to move this down to here and say composition, trim comp to work area. But, okay, now I'm in After Effects. I'm going to make a shape. I'm going to make the shape 3D. And it's moving together with the camera. Of course, we have to position it in 3D scene. This is why often I will prefer to go, and look how the light is also shining on the After Effects shape as well. This is why I'll often prefer to go from After Effects to 3D to compose things, because there's a far smaller set of camera angles that look good in 2.5D, because shapes don't have volume, right? But you can go either way, right? So here, look that the stuff we added to the scene moves in perfect synchronization with the pre-rendered movie file. And once again, this thing that we brought out of Cinema 4D, this is not a 3D object anymore. This is a rendered piece of video footage, right?
And yet all the cameras and lights are still...
Exactly. We brought the render with the data, or with the keyframes for the cameras and the lights. Exactly.
Is it an MOV or...
It's a MOV. Well, this is a sequence of PNG files. We tried QuickTime, but we found out that just like Maya, it's a little weird. So this is so if you look at the desktop where we've been saving everything, our render is a series of frames.
Is that 24?
Uh-huh. Well, 25 counting 0, but it's running at 24 frames per second. Whereas this export file, let's take a look at it in our text editor. Notice how similar this looks to a lot of the things we've been experimenting with. This is just a formatted text file.
So that After Effects doesn't do the other.
Oh, it does.
AC.
Right. Yeah, that's the whole superpower of Cinema 4D, is that you can exchange data either way using a built-in method. So let's try this now. You're going to set up an After Effects comp. So here we have a couple of 3D layers. And let's put them at different depths so we can really tell about the camera move. But like I said, because these are just flat cards, right? Because these are just flat cards, it's very easy to build a scene in 3D and take it into After Effects, and everything is sort of seen from the edge and looks flat and wrong. Whereas I would say generally, if you build the scene in After Effects, If you build the scene in After Effects, you're more likely to end up with a pleasing result because you'll have composed it with all this flat stuff in mind. All right, so here's a stupid scene in After Effects, and let's render this out. Export Cinema 4D Exporter. And now we can say, let's delete this camera because I think we're about to get a new one. Open. Okay.
Oh, AC is only for intertap results. Did this just generate a C40 file?
Right.
Okay.
So I have to build a new camera here. So here, let's reopen this. Open test C4D. No. Yes, I do. Oh, we can have multiple projects open in here. Intriguing. No. Open. Okay, I want to see where is my camera here. Because how do I compose things for it if I don't? Oh, we're already using that camera. All right. So right away we begin messing with the file we've created. All right, that's not a good idea. Save, no. Open. Okay, so right away we should say cameras, use camera default. There we go. All right, so that's an important trick. Otherwise, you'll right away begin messing with the After Effects camera, which we shouldn't be messing with. Right? You should keep it the same so they'll match up. Because what we want to do here is we want to build a scene that will look good in After Effects. So we'll have, let's have this camera show us the After Effects camera, and then this will be the working area we'll use to navigate around. So let's create a cube. And put it here. And let's give it a material. Display. Copy paste. Paste. All right, here's just a stupid thing. And look how we have our After Effects camera move has been imported into Cinema 4D. So I'm going to.
What happened to the solids that you built in the
Well, that's the thing. You can't actually exchange. You can't actually share your assets. You can only share your camera move. So we're gonna bring this back into After Effects and composite it. Those are still waiting for us back in AE. So here we go. Alpha channel. And you can see how you could sort of loop back around and around. Another thing you can do is use your nulls. If you have nulls, you can use them for reference. In After Effects, you can create nulls in space, and then those will come in as well, so you can know where things are. You don't have to fly blind like we're doing here. So now I'm going to render this out. Output. And look how here it's saved actually the frame rate for us. Project settings. That should all match After Effects automatically. Good. So now we just need to say add to render queue and start render. Oops. Okay, we've done something wrong here. I think we've left it at the default camera. Render, edit render settings. Add to render queue. No. I'm looking for how we choose here the default camera, or the new camera to render with, and not. Okay, so I guess the perspective window has to be set to the default camera in order to use it, because we can't actually edit this. And then start rendering. There we go. All right. I'm going to say I'm going to right click on this and say reload footage. And there we go. That seems a little off right there. So that's sharing footage between Cinema 4D and After Effects. Questions? So refresh my memory. What were some of the other things that you wanted to cover?
Could you talk about ways to like speed up render times?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, besides lots of new computer features, but just like
Okay. Well.
I mean, because like I understand about especially in the preview, setting it to like a third or
Right.
more.
Well, your frame rate, right? Your frame rate and resolution affect your render time, right?
Right.
Twice the width and height means 4 times as much render time, right? And twice half the frame rate means half the render time. So working at 12 frames per second wherever possible can help. I said working at lower resolutions can help, although these days I wouldn't work at less than HD. I would do everything in full HD.
1280 by 720, not,
Well, it's
considered 1280.
yeah. Well, for marketing purposes, the name I like is Baby HD. I've heard it referred to as and it is one of the older, bigger than SD standards, right? So it's that's why I like Baby HD. Well, it's bigger than standard definition. It's a lot bigger and better than standard definition, but it's not full HD. So Baby HD, and it's not a difficult format like 1440 by 1080, which is one of the other interim like anamorphic formats. Anamorphic means it's stored in a different shape than it's projected and is watched, like DV. If you when you work on that 720 by 480, like a weird size. There was a lot of 1440 by 1080 gear in the middle of the aughts for things that couldn't handle full HD. So that's a weird squish size that I wouldn't recommend making anything for. So it's not like that. Like it's 16:9, 1280 by 720. And I would, as a rule of thumb, I would say that Baby HD looks very decent at a living room scale. So even on like a 50-inch TV, it's going to look nice. and it probably wouldn't even be easy for someone to tell the difference between a full HD and a baby HD at a living room scale, where it really shows up as projected. Like that's the big difference between HD and SD, and also the reason I'm not terribly worried about. Okay, well it's going to go 4K, and then things are going to get bigger, and we're just going to be on this treadmill. The big shift that we underwent in this decade is between video that looked like crap projected and video that looked decent projected. Right? Like SD is just too few dots to spread over a big wall at the end of the theater and resolve an image pleasingly. HD is enough. So 4K might look better, but fundamentally you can have, because we're mostly watching 2K movies in the theater right now.
What's so what's that resolution right now?
For HD or for movie theaters?
For movie theaters.
They use a slightly different standard. It's 2000 and something for DCP. There's even
Not just regular projectors.
that's a good question. An awful lot of projectors, because we have to go by the native resolution. Because a lot of projectors you can scale an image smaller or even bigger,
Right.
but a lot of native are still 4x3, 1024x7, 68. Increasingly, we're seeing projectors that are are baby HD or full HD. Ideally, you'd want a native resolution 2K projector for a really good experience. There are even some that are weird sizes to account for 3D. They're like 1920 by 2160, so double the vertical resolution, and they pack 2 HD frames in there for stereo 3D. Let's look up just quickly DCP.
You could also turn off movie to make it faster.
Yeah. Oh, to make it faster. Here, I just wanna.
I read something online because I was looking for it, because my